West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire.
After an 8-month investigation, the Senate Judiciary Committee today will release a report on how the Trump administration attempted to subvert the law in an effort to keep the president in office. The report provides new details on the efforts of then acting Assistant Attorney General Jeffrey Clark as he attempted to do the bidding of President Trump. Joining us now, Chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Democratic Majority Whip, Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois. So, Senator Durbin, you just rolled out this report. We're getting our first look at it. Let me start with Jeffrey Clark, a name I'm not sure most Americans are familiar with. Who is he exactly, and what did you find he did in the days around January 6th and in that attempt to overturn the election?
Jeffrey Clark played an outsized role in the effort of the President of the United States to overturn the results of the last election. I don't know how he came on the scene originally. We think it might have been through a Pennsylvania Republican congressman. He was head of the civil division in the Department of Justice, and the acting attorney general at the time, Jeffrey Rosen, and his deputy attorney general, Richard O'Donoghue, noticed that all of a sudden his name was popping up in conversations with the White House, and he was making statements to people about what the Department of Justice should do, certainly not within his responsibilities as the head of the civil division. Ultimately, he became the choice of the president, Donald Trump, to replace Jeffrey Rosen when Rosen and Donahue resisted the president in his efforts to subvert the election.
And you find direct pressure from the White House with Mark Meadows putting pressure on the Department of Justice, Jeffrey Rosen and others, and saying you need to initiate investigations of fraud in the elections that President Trump lost, state-by-state elections. So what was Mark Meadows' role here in your investigation?
We have to recall that it's been a long tradition between the Department of Justice and the White House as to contacts made suggesting activity by the Department of Justice. I think that the strongest pillar was established during the Watergate era when they saw Richard Nixon trying to manipulate the White House. You remember the Saturday Night Massacre and all that followed from that. And so they established standards that basically said there are a limited number of people and a limited purpose for the contacts and communications between the White House and Department of Justice. I'm sorry to say Mr. Meadows broke that very basic standard and started pummeling the Department of Justice under Jeffrey Rosen, trying to get them to take actions and investigate things one after the other. It was a clear breakdown in what was supposed to be a trusting relationship between the two.
Your committee had closed-door interviews with the former acting attorney general, Jeffrey Rosen, and he described pressure directly from the president. I think it was 9 phone calls from former President Trump to Jeffrey Rosen. How did he describe those phone calls? What was the president asking him to do?
The president was relentless. As soon as William Barr announced that he found no wholesale fraud in the election results and announced he was leaving, That was when the President of the United States decided to put full court pressure on the new acting Attorney General, Jeffrey Rosen. And as I said before, he was relentless. When you look at the number of contacts, we're still waiting for even more evidence to come in on that subject. He was really pushing the Department of Justice to bend to his political will. And I will tell you, I don't think I'm overstating the case. We were a half step away from a full-blown constitutional crisis. If Rosen would have folded, if the other members of the leadership and the Department of Justice were not willing to stand behind him, and I give them credit for that, we could have seen the Attorney General of the United States pushing for the election results to be ignored by governors and states across the nation. It would have been catastrophic.
Senator Durbin, good morning. It's Jonathan Lemire. It's sort of remarkable that we're coming up on a year almost since the election. And, January the 6th was 9 months ago. And we're still learning so much about what happened in those really perilous days. Just how close we came, as you said, to things going even further awry than they already did. So my question to you right now is, what comes next? What are the next steps? Where else are these probes going? What are other avenues, threads you are looking to pull? And what sort of consequences, if any, will there be for some of the people involved?
Well, as far as Mr. Clark is concerned, we have notified the officials in D.C. that we believe there's serious question as to whether he should still be licensed to practice law in light of his conduct that's been disclosed in this testimony and evidence. That's one thing. But the bigger question is, why are we holding back? Well, the reason is Mitch McConnell and the Senate Republicans said they would not participate in a bipartisan commission to investigate January 6th and what led up to it. And this was part of the entree to the January 6th episode, which we all remember. Luckily, the Select Committee in the House, a bipartisan committee appointed by Speaker Pelosi and containing Congresswoman Cheney as well as Congressman Kinzinger of Illinois, is pursuing this matter as they should. We have turned over all of our results to them. We have consulted with them as to make sure we didn't jeopardize any of their activities. But that is a very viable and credible effort to get to the bottom of a lot of these questions.
Senator, you mentioned now Senate Minority Leader McConnell, and I wanted to get your take on his offer yesterday about the debt ceiling, offering an extension, if you will, pushing the deadline down to December, but still very much clearly saying, hey, this is Democrats and Democrats alone. This is your problem. You got to fix it. What do you make of that? What do you make of his just overall approach to this matter?
I tell you, it's a very dangerous approach. It's very political, and he is risking the economy of the United States. We have literally never defaulted on our debt. Our credit rating is as strong as it is in the world because we pay our debts as they're incurred. Senator McConnell decided to challenge that basic premise and to say that we could default on the debt as part of his political strategy. That finally, in the cold of the morning hour, when he took a look at what the results might be, he changed his mind, and I'm glad he did. Now we've got to make sure that we have a process to approve our debt ceiling on a regular basis without this political drama. The drama itself costs the American economy. It threatens to raise interest rates and jeopardize jobs and really be an obstacle to our economic growth. It was an irresponsible effort. So we at least have till December to finish the hard work that we have to do on the bipartisan infrastructure bill and the reconciliation bill that deals with things like the cost of prescription drugs. We can get that done, and we should. And then December, let's not go through this drama again. Let's not relive it. For goodness sakes, the American people deserve better.
Senator, before I let you go, I want to circle back one last time to the Judiciary Committee's report that we've been talking about with you this morning. As you read through it, some of the details are pretty breathtaking. What you describe there really is the White House attempt to take over the Department of Justice effectively, to run some people out who are not supportive of that effort and to put in people they believe would support their overturning of the election. What alarms you most as you heard that testimony, as your committee draws those conclusions?
How close we came to a constitutional crisis, the likes of which we've never seen in this country, and I hope we never, ever see. But this president was prepared to shred the Constitution to keep his position in the White House. And when it didn't work in his direct appeal to the courts, he went to try to take over the Department of Justice. When that didn't work, he turned the mob loose in the streets on January 6th in Washington. He was in a relentless effort to protect his own presidency, even at the cost of the Constitution and our nation.
It is Thursday, the 7th of October of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Well, how are you doing? We have some relatively good news, though it will be temporary, as we know. In fact, it's probably already changed as I speak. But a judge in Texas, Trump appointed, by the way, put the kibosh on the anti-abortion, or the Texas anti-abortion law. You know, the one that says that you can't have an abortion after 6 weeks, and that anybody in America, probably even around the world, has up to how many years? 5 years to file a complaint against you and anybody you know and anybody who might have come across your path for helping you get an abortion, even if you haven't just suspected of it. Well, that judge wrote I believe it was a 166-page opinion and ruling, which, of course, the Fifth Circuit won't read one word of when they overturn it, so it gets kicked up to Amy and the rest of that cabal. All right. Well, they say they're not partisan acts. That's what they say. All right. Well, that's actually some good news. The initial kiboshing of the law. And unusual, too, because I rail against these Federalist Society judges. These judges handpicked because they're in the Federalist Society by Trump to get slotted in to pack the courts. I don't know. Sometimes I hear also that when one gets put into a position of responsibility like this, their initial outlook on life changes dramatically because they see the world as it really is instead of how they think it is. Some of them. Others are just so craven, they're put there for one reason, and that's to, well, I guess, deconstruct the administrative state. They're foot soldiers in the cause. And they seem to be working pretty good, too, to the point where I don't want to engage on these Facebook groups, because when you do, if you're a liberal, you are usually suspended for a very long period of time. So when you want to say happy birthday to an aging relative you may never see or speak with again, you're suspended and you can't do it. See? Okay. And that's supposed to keep me quiet about my politics, huh? Well, I'll tell you something. Anyway, in the local Rogue River Facebook group here, who actually, that group got censored by the city council and others for fomenting conspiracy theories, racism, calls to violence. And I'm not talking about, well, let's just put it this way. The reason that all those behaviors manifested themselves is because liberals actually had the audacity to disagree. And I won't get into all the specific instances in real life that occurred because of this Facebook group here in Rogue River. But they did prevail upon the administrator that he had to take a little bit more care. But of course, he's already anti-police, secessionist type anyway. So I do notice that you'll see pro-Trump posts up, which the rules of the road in this group is that there's no politics. But the maggots, and I'm sorry, am I making them into some sort of blood-sucking comparison? Yes, I am. They're maggots. Actually, it's an insult to maggots because maggots actually have some good in the world that they provide. They do. But the maggots can post all sorts of pro-Trump stuff, anti-vax stuff, and as soon as they are disagreed with, the post does come down, the whole post. But it stays up until someone says something. in disagreement or to present facts, because facts don't matter. They're all opinions now. But to get back to this most current iteration of ridiculousness here, and I see what happens in this little Facebook group here in Rogue River as a microcosm of something much larger out there, even though there's only a third or less of them in the whole body politic. Anyway, people are starting to complain about the post office has been slowed down. Don't they have enough people staffed there? I mean, what is going on? And, of course, the first responses are, it's the damn agenda. They want to destroy everything. And I just reminded them that actually, no. This happened a couple of Republican administrations ago. A couple? Well, at least from Trump into the previous one. And that was, Bush Co., where they put the funding of retirements 70 years into the before workers are even born. You got to pay for their retirement quarterly. 70 years into the future. No other corporation, no other government entity, no quasi-private government entity has to do that. Only the Postal Service. And then we have an embed, someone tasked with deconstructing the administrative state, personified in one DeJoy. And these policies are not part of a Dem agenda. It's part of the maggot agenda. But then when presented with those facts, before that post is taken down, of course, because I don't think the administrator has seen it yet, but he will. In response to that, oh, well, it's both sides then. Both sides are so corrupt. No. I'm tired of this both sides BS. One side is trying to destroy America and representative democracy and has stated as such. And the other side is not. In fact, they are trying to preserve the great experiment. Due process and equal protection for all. So don't tell me it's both sides. Saving America is the same, the equivalent of destroying America? No. Punch the Nazis. And if you're a Nazi and you don't like being punched, you have a choice. Stop being a Nazi or get punched. And just so that we're clear, getting punched does not necessarily mean only an actual physical altercation in which you are punching a Nazi with your fist upon their cranium, for instance. I personally like to hit him a couple of times in the ribcage and then work my way up, but hey, that's just me. No, punching a Nazi is also, well, let's be clear, making their lives miserable. Oh, they don't want to be identified? Too bad. Some people call it karma. When that you perpetuated on people then is perpetuated upon you. No one ever likes it. They don't believe in the golden rule. They don't. Well, we could go on and on and on, of course, as we do most mornings, but we do have a curated show. And we might as well let you know what's part of that curated show. And this is the time when we do it. Well, at the top, the Senate Judiciary Committee released new testimony and a staff report on how Trump pressured the DOJ to overturn the 2020 election. Well, we all knew it, but here's the evidence. Then on the rest of the menu, the cybersecurity lawyer charged in the Durham probe has demanded more information about the case, and pretty much because none of the charges make any sense. Yeah, this is the probe that looked into the hoax of the Russia investigation. Who started that? Who said that Russia was involved? Oh, yeah. All right. Well, we'll find out, won't we? And we already have. The Department of Justice is poised to sue contractors who do not report cyber breaches. It's about time. And the Federal Trade Commission sent notices to 70 for-profit universities that significant financial penalties could be imposed if the schools deceive students about how successful their graduates were. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where NATO expelled 8 members of Russia's mission to the alliance who were, quote, undeclared Russian intelligence officers. And German police carried out large-scale raids on a criminal network suspected of laundering $162 million. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the right of the page is our chat room link. And the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly, for doing so. If you would then look across the page to the left, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, and to the left from that chat room link, you will be able to locate our link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, and some already have, thank you. But if you could send us the equivalent of what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink just once a month, send those funds our way, and we throw those funds into a big kitty that we pulled out of our own wallets, and we pay our bills, fly under the radar, and continue this resistance against, let's be clear, it is a Nazi fascist takeover of the United States of America. We've held them at bay for quite a while, but they've reared their ugly head, and they're not going away anytime soon. At least they aren't by being nice. And we're a thorn in their side, and we thank you for allowing us to fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended. And that's punch the Nazis. And you know what I mean by that. Make their lives miserable. At least it's a start. Okay? All right. But thank you anyway, all joking aside. The bills are continuing to increase. And of course, we always have issues with software, machinery, hardware too, and it's a constant recycling, cycle things in as things are being cycled out, and we would truly be unable to do this without your help, so we thank you for your generosity. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, you can do so simply by going to @NetrootsRadio. Tom takes care of that. Thank you, Tom. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, in fact, I suggest you do, because I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime, and then get that linked up on Twitter @JusticePutnam. And the show notes and links are a very integral part to this multimedia operation here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. You can also follow the show on Twitter @CookbookWest, and please do pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found, mixed in with all the rest of us, because we're all there. All right. Oh, a little update on the health front. Knock on wood. Because, as I mentioned in previous shows, that I'm of the belief that this virus has volition. It has some sort of intelligence. Because when you say that you're feeling well, then you start feeling like shit almost immediately. It was weird. But all that stated, I've given it a little bit of time, and I'm actually starting to feel pretty good. Knock on wood. I mean, there's still some lingering fatigue, but not as bad. The cloudy brain, the woozy feeling I described it as. Other people call it a brain fog. It was almost like being hungover without a headache. I don't know, it was weird. My peripheral vision was impacted a little bit. And usually that would occur when I would get really drunk. That's one of the reasons why I never got really drunk. Did that a few times and everything closed in on me. Tunnel vision. I hated it. So why would I want to do that again? Anyway, a weird sort of peripheral vision thing was going on. My middle ear, was just a little unsteady. It was weird. But those symptoms have abated, and that's a good thing. So knock on wood, I'm starting to feel much better. I'm able to catch up on a lot of the stuff here at the mothership because it's a pretty big lot. Got to take care of it. And the structure, too. Anyway, Mom is getting better, though her stay in the care home will probably be to at least the end of the month. 21st is the projected date. She remains in the COVID ward. We haven't quite figured out if, she gets moved out of the COVID ward, what that entails in terms, does she have to go to another facility? This particular place isn't necessarily set up for, I guess, the care that she needs except in the COVID ward. Of course, we worry about her being in the COVID ward because if she gets sick again in a COVID setting, that's not good. So we also got some, and these are not HIPAA violations because I'm not selling this information, okay? Just so you know, I don't work at that care home. Now, if the care home had sold this information to a third party, that would be a HIPAA violation. But anyway, divulging these facts, it's just a narrative. It's a little diary because, well, at least in our family, we love our mom. Don't we all? A lot of us do, even when we've had problems. And then suddenly you realize, it's still my mom. And she is. But regardless, she's still got a little ways to go. She is getting a little stir crazy, too. And I don't blame her. Can't go anywhere. She can't anyway. It's a little difficult just to get to the restroom. But she was complaining about the dearth of intellectually stimulating TV. That all they had was, I suspect, since it's local, the only thing local are Sinclair channels. Every single major affiliate that carries the majors is a Sinclair channel. So when you get to the local news and the commercials and all sorts of other stuff, they kind of balance out the facts of the world with whatever it is that Sinclair is doing to the United States of America. First they bought up all of the church radio stations. Next thing you know, they're a multimedia operation. They got to change the rules so that they can have newspapers, radio stations, TVs, channels, all in the same market. It used to be a law you couldn't do that because we might have something like a Sinclair arise, and that would be detrimental to representative democracy. And you know what? They were right. But anyway, she'd like to have something a little bit more stimulating. So taking the newspaper to her, some other little reading materials. She gets brochures, to buy stuff, but she won't really be able to buy stuff in there. But at least she can look at it. And a few other things to sort of occupy her. Yes, I did take the dogs to visit her yesterday, and that really lifted her spirits because she is lonely and yeah, it's making me feel bad. I want her to get well so she can come home soon. But Gunner crawled up. Now we're visiting my mom outside her window, which is sort of like where the little parking lot is and a grass belt area and whatnot. So Ginger, the little Yorkshire poodle I'm able to hold in my arms, And she being deaf and getting quite old, I think we think she's about 14. Ew, that's kind of old for a dog, isn't it? And don't talk to me about dog years. I've heard all of the different explanations of what true dog years are. And it's not 7, but it's still. 14 is quite old for a gal like her. But she's gone deaf, the Ginger, the little Yorkshire poodle. And I think her eyesight's a little off. But her scent is really good. And she knew that Mom was there. And she perked up a bit. And Gunner was so cute. They positioned my mom's bed around so that you could see out the window. But Gunner, being an English bulldog, he's kind of low to the ground, too. Yeah, packet of mass, little white dwarf. Boy, there's a lot of mass to him. But he crawled up a little bit because he could tell that Mom was there. And he was just so happy to see her, too. And Mom was happy, and it just made her happy that Gunner was, like, hey, Mom. So that was rather sweet. And I'm of the belief that lifted spirits are curative. Depressed spirits are not. So we want to lift Mom's spirits as much as we can. All right. So let's get into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. This first offering comes from the Associated Press by Eric Tucker. Attorneys for a cybersecurity lawyer charged in a special counsel's probe into the Trump-Russia investigation asked federal prosecutors to provide more information about the indictment, calling the allegations vague, ill-defined, and confusing. The motion by attorneys for Michael Sussman previews the lines of attack they intend to use in defending him on a charge of making a false statement to the FBI 5 years ago. The case was brought last month by John Durham, the prosecutor tasked with examining the U.S. government's investigation into the ties between Russia and Donald Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. Now, what we're talking about is they're investigating the investigation because the investigation is a hoax. Everywhere around the world, whatever Russia's doing is a hoax. All righty. Sussman has pleaded not guilty, and his lawyers have attacked the cases driven by politics rather than facts. Sussman is accused of lying to the FBI during a September 2016 conversation in which he relayed concerns about potentially suspicious cyber contacts between a Trump Organization server and the server of a Russian bank. The indictment alleges Sussman told the FBI's then general counsel, James Baker, that he was not bringing the concerns to the FBI on behalf of any particular client when he was actually representing the Clinton campaign and a technology executive. In a motion filed yesterday, Wednesday, Sussman's lawyers note that the alleged false statement was unrecorded and that there are no contemporaneous notes about it. Baker, the sole witness, has already disclaimed memory of the statement and has testified in ways that support rather than cut against Sussman's accounts. Sussman, they say, his lawyers, has consistently maintained, including in testimony to Congress, that he met with the FBI on behalf of a cyber expert client. His lawyers say he met with Baker to advise the FBI about a forthcoming news media report describing potential cyber contacts between the Trump server and the Russian bank, Alpha Bank. The FBI ultimately examined the matter, but found no evidence of a communications back channel. Really? Now, let's also remind ourselves that before Trump, if a hostile, even if it wasn't hostile, even if they were an ally, but in this instance, a hostile foreign government contacts you or does something to you, the first thing that you do is tell the FBI. But in Trump world, going to the FBI means that you have some sort of nefarious reason for going against Donald Trump. He's a mobster. That's how mobsters think. The motion for what's known in the law as a bill of particulars seeks additional information about the allegations, including the precise words of Sussman's alleged false statement, the context in which it was made, what part of it was false, and why it was material. While the indictment in this matter is 27 pages long, the majority of the allegations are not relevant to the crime the special counsel has chosen to charge, says the motion from Sussman's lawyers. And on that charge, a single alleged false statement, the indictment plainly fails to provide Mr. Sussman with the detail and the clarity that the law requires, and that is essential in enabling Mr. Sussman to prepare his defense, the lawyers said. A spokesman for the Justice Department declined to comment last evening because John Durham's a rogue guy. They have no idea what that guy's doing. Now, Durham, a longtime federal prosecutor who served for years as the U.S. Attorney in Connecticut, was tapped in 2019 by then Attorney General William Barr to examine any potential misconduct in the federal investigation into potential coordination between Russia and the 2016 Trump campaign. Investigations by Special Counsel Robert Mueller detailed significant contacts between Russians and Trump associates, but did not allege a criminal conspiracy to tip the outcome of the presidential election, because that was left up to Congress and the impeachment process, and we know what happened there. Barr appointed him last year as special counsel, giving him extra protection intended to ensure that he could complete his work without being fired in a new administration, unlike how Trump packed all of the DOJ with his sycophants. The case against Sussman is only the second criminal prosecution Durham has brought in roughly 2.5 years of work. Last year, he secured a guilty plea from a former FBI lawyer, Kevin Kleinsmith, on a charge that he altered a government email. Kleinsmith was sentenced to probation. Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, is also brought to us by Eric Tucker from the Associated Press. The Justice Department is poised to sue government contractors and other companies who receive U.S. government grants if they fail to report breaches of their computer systems or misrepresent their cybersecurity practices. Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco said the department is prepared to take action under a statute called the False Claims Act that permits the government to file lawsuits over misused federal funds. The Justice Department will also protect whistleblowers who come forward to report those issues, she said. The action, unveiled at the Aspen Cyber Summit, is aimed at contractors who fail to report hacks or who knowingly provide deficient cybersecurity products. It's an outgrowth of an ongoing Justice Department cyber policy review and is also part of a broader Biden administrative effort to incentivize contractors and private companies to share information with the government about breaches and to bolster their own cybersecurity defenses. Officials have repeatedly spoken of the need for better private sector engagement as the government confronts a surge in ransomware attacks that in the last year have targeted critical infrastructure and major corporations. staff at Reuters brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Some 70 U.S. for-profit colleges, including some of the largest, were sent notices that the Federal Trade Commission could impose significant financial penalties if the schools deceive students about how successful their graduates were. The FTC commissioners, who often split along party lines, voted 5-0 to use a dormant penalty authority against any school that, for example, overstated how likely it was that graduates would get jobs and how much they could hope to earn. The notices were sent to schools and included the largest for-profit colleges and vocational schools in the United States, the agency said in a statement, while adding that a school receiving a letter was not an indication of wrongdoing. Complaints about for-profit schools rose some 70% between 2018 and 2020. I wonder who was president then, who ran a fraudulent university they had to pay $20 million fine for. The notices echo an effort by the Obama administration to pursue for-profit schools whose former students have high loan default rates. At least one chain of schools, Corinthian Colleges, collapsed when its students were denied access to federal student loans. For too long, unscrupulous for-profit schools have preyed on students with impunity, facing no penalties when they defraud their students and drive them into debt, said FTC Chair Lena Khan in a statement. Working closely with our state and federal partners, we'll be monitoring this market carefully. The letters were sent to the University of Phoenix, DeVry University, Grand Canyon University, among others. A spokesman for Grand Canyon declined to comment, but said that the school was now a nonprofit, although he said that the education department continued to treat it as a for-profit and the issue was the subject of litigation. The other two schools did not respond to a request for comment because they never do. All right, let's get to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Karen Hopkin. They say it's darkest before the dawn, and that's just the way that sweat bees like it. These tropical insects, which live on an island in the middle of the Panama Canal, visit night-blooming flowers under cover of darkness. And a new study shows that the shapes made by gaps in the rainforest canopy help them find their way home. The work appears in the journal Current Biology.
Even though most bees are active in bright daylight, there are a few species that have become nocturnal due to competition and due to predators.
Eric Warrant, a professor of zoology at the University of Lund in Sweden.
This is particularly true of the warmer parts of the world, such as the steamy rainforests of Panama.
Warrant and his colleagues have been studying these night flyers, called Megaloptogenalis, for more than 20 years.
We have discovered that, like all bees, Megalopter is able to learn visual landmarks around the nest and presumably also along the foraging route.
They use these landmarks to find their way through the vast forest and to recognize their nests. It's no easy feat, especially considering the size of these nocturnal navigators.
Exactly how they manage to do this with such tiny eyes and with such a small brain is still to a large extent a mystery.
But it seemed that the first step would be to simply look up.
There is one visual cue that is quite obvious in this otherwise profoundly dim environment, and these are the bright patches of night sky seen through gaps in the forest canopy directly above.
But do the bees raise their eyes while flying forward in the dark? To find out, the researchers got to messing with the megalopta.
We placed the megalopta nest, which is a hollowed-out stick, at a stand in the forest.
Sandra Scheib, a University of Lund doctoral student who worked on the project.
On both sides of the nest, we placed 2 additional mock nest sticks, which we had drilled holes in to resemble nests.
Above each nest, they placed a distinctive visual landmark, a single black bar to mark the real nest, and a pattern of stripes in different orientations above the fake nests.
The bee was allowed to forage for a few nights to get acquainted with the area.
And then one night, when the bee was away, Scheib would shuffle the landmarks. And when the busy bee got back,
she immediately entered the nest underneath the landmark she had learned.
Which was one of the fakes.
Of course, after a few seconds, she realized her mistake and she came back out again.
But after a short flight to get reoriented, she would again make the same mistake. So it seems the bees were sneaking in a last look up before flying in the front door. And the same thing happened when the researchers used circles of different sizes to form more canopy-like patterns to mark the entrance to the nests.
She took a look at the pattern from underneath and flew directly into the mock nests.
The results were as clear as day. But there in the dark, they weren't exactly easy to see.
Even if we put a hand in front of our face, it's very difficult to see it.
Since it was totally dark, I used night goggles to monitor the nest.
And an infrared camera to film the bees' comings and goings, after sunset and before dawn.
Of course, it's not the most pleasant thing getting up in the middle of the night to set up the cameras. On the other hand, the rainforest is the most amazing place at that time, and many animals are the most active at this time.
Even the humble sweat bees, which will showcase their remarkable skills for anyone who's prepared to watch. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Karen Hopkin.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
For an expectant mother, taking care of her developing baby means taking good care of herself. One way she can do this is by ensuring she gets vaccinated. If a woman is or might be pregnant during flu season, it's especially important to get her annual flu shot, preferably before the end of October. In addition, women should be vaccinated against whooping cough during the 3rd trimester of each pregnancy. Failure to get vaccinated places both mother and baby at increased risk for serious complications of these infections, including hospitalization and even death. If you're pregnant or planning to get pregnant, ask your healthcare provider when you should get your vaccines. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Are you losing sleep over the 12th Amendment? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. The answer probably is, of course not. What's the 12th Amendment? The 12th Amendment, ratified in 1804, sets forth how the Electoral College is supposed to work, how the votes are certified and counted, and what happens if no candidate has a majority. That messy picture brings us to the Electoral Count Act of 1887, the law that established the Electoral College's procedures, still used today. It's a law with ambiguities and some poorly drafted provisions. Among its problems, a sentence that says that a state legislature can appoint electors of its own choice if the state has, quote, failed to make a choice on Election Day, whatever that means. There are other inartful parts of that law that a few argue are unconstitutional and thus allow the vice president, in essence, to count only the votes he wants to. Clarity in the law is possible. But so far, the Congress has taken no action in that regard, and state legislatures have rushed in the opposite direction, passing laws that allow them to ignore the votes and instead select their own electors to choose the president. These laws steer us down a bad road to authoritarianism. So, yes, we should be losing sleep over the 12th Amendment, the anti-democratic Electoral College, and the laws that will decide future presidential elections. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU, because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1933. That was the day Detroit anarchist labor leader Joseph Labate died. Born in Paw Paw in 1850, Joe was born to descendants of French immigrants and grew up among native Potawatomi peoples in southwest Michigan. He became a printer, joining the local typographical union number 18, and worked for the Detroit Post and Tribune. He was an early leader of the Socialist Labor Party. By 1878, Joe organized the first Knights of Labor Assembly in Detroit. He served as the first president of the Detroit Trades Council and founded the Michigan Federation of Labor. He wrote tirelessly for a number of labor and socialist newspapers across the country. He embraced anarchism and soon produced a popular column titled Cranky Notions. Labate enjoyed the company and correspondence of radical labor leaders like Emma Goldman, Albert and Lucy Parsons, Eugene V. Debs, Benjamin Tucker, Terence Powderly, and others of the progressive era. He was often referred to as the gentle anarchist for his insistence on nonviolence and distancing from those anarchists who advocated the use of violence as an acceptable tactic. Labate was also known to never throw out any printed material relevant to labor or radical causes. His biographer, Carletta Anderson, notes that the story of his life, deeds, and thoughts is abundantly revealed through the treasure trove of letters, periodicals, clippings, manuscripts, booklets, photos, and circulars once stored in his attic and now housed in the Labate collection of the University of Michigan. His stockpile of documents of social protest has proven a boon to scholars, enabling them to study the early labor movement in detail. When he died at the age of 83, he considered this to be his legacy.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 41 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high of only about 68 or so. And partly cloudy skies should prevail through most of the day. Winds light and variable. A few passing clouds tonight with lows in the low 40s. Winds remaining light and variable. And mostly cloudy skies tomorrow early will become partly cloudy later in the day with highs in the low 60s and winds remaining light and variable. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon have spiked once again. We are now standing at 221,043 confirmed cases, and deceased have gone up half a dozen and now stand at 290. Barometric pressure, if I can get to the pane in which that is at, because I scrolled right past it, unfortunately. Oh, okay. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.1 inches. Visibility is down to 7 miles, and relative humidity is at 100%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 64 and mostly cloudy. Paris is 64 and mostly cloudy. Rome is 70 degrees and partly cloudy. Kyiv is 52 and fair. Kabul is 65 and clear. Hong Kong is 77 with a steady rain. Tokyo is 71 degrees and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 62 and cloudy. San Francisco, California is 53 and mostly cloudy with a fog advisory on the bay and offshore. And New York, New York is 68 degrees Fahrenheit and partly cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Robin Emmett and Andrew Osborne of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. NATO has expelled 8 members of Russia's mission to the alliance who were undeclared Russian intelligence officers, a NATO official said. The latest deterioration in East-West ties that are already at post-Cold War lows. The expulsion of the Russians was reported earlier by Sky News, which said Moscow's mission to the alliance headquarters in Brussels would be halved in response to suspected malign Russian activities, including killings and espionage. There was no immediate comment from the Kremlin.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Staff at the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Police carried out large-scale raids in 25 German cities yesterday, Wednesday, after a chance discovery last year put investigators on the trail of a money laundering network alleged to have funneled millions in ill-gotten gains abroad. Officials said the raids, which began in the early hours, involved about 1,400 officers and took place in the states of North Rhine-Westphalia, Lower Saxony, and Bremen. They targeted 67 suspects, including 44 Syrians, 10 Germans, 5 Jordanians, and 4 Lebanese. 11 people were arrested, including a 39-year-old Syrian man who is accused of membership in Syria's Nusra Front extremist group. 6 others are considered by authorities to be part of the Islamist spectrum, including 2 who are deemed potential threats. The raids were part of an investigation into so-called Hawala network widely used in Muslim countries, in which individuals rather than banks act as brokers for money transfers. German public broadcaster WDR reported that at least some of the laundered money was sent to Turkey and Syria, where it may have been used to fund militant groups. The network first came to light when police attending a traffic crash in May of 2020 noticed some passengers behaving suspiciously. A search of the vehicle revealed gym bags stuffed with about $350,000 in cash. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. De novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.